Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a completely fascinating look at the human operating system. Every single one of us is running on this massive, complex set of social code. And let's be real, most of it was installed without our permission. If you've ever felt just trapped by modern expectations and labels, well, this was built specifically for you. We're going to explore exactly how to recover your original, uncorrupted code and finally reconnect with that authentic child within.
I want you to really think about this for a second. When did you stop singing, or painting, or even dancing? Because before kids learn what the world expects of them, they just express themselves naturally. They sing way before they speak, right? They paint before they write. But somewhere down the line, we kind of just stop. We stop because we're terrified of judgment, or someone tells us we aren't quote unquote talented, or we just worry too much about what people think. And little by little, the world trains us to suppress the exact gifts that used to flow effortlessly. Because here's the thing, nobody actually has to teach a child how to express themselves. Creativity isn't something you learn, it's literally what you arrived with. It's our natural language, our original unconditioned state before society stepped in and handed us a script of who to be. That deep longing to imagine, to explore, to just create, it's still in there, waiting for you to remember it.
Okay, so let's dive right into this. Here's our system diagnostics menu. We're going to start with the system boot, then look at downloading the bloatware, identifying the bugs, running the software update, and finally hitting system restart.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, System Boot, the unconditioned self. So, every human arrives inside a pre-existing operating system, sure, but nobody comes pre-programmed. We actually start completely blank. Think about it. A child arrives with no religion, no politics, no social status, no concept of success, no enemies, no rigid identity, and absolutely zero fear of failure. Version 1.0 of you arrived totally empty of these societal labels. You experienced reality directly rather than viewing it through the inherited filters and assumptions that cloud our vision later on. You didn't mean anything yet. You just were. Which brings us to Section 2, downloading the bloatware, society's operating system.
Now, before we can even consciously form a thought, the world starts installing these frameworks through which we'll interpret reality forever. And look at this stark contrast between memorization and conscious questioning. Traditional education often just trains us to memorize what previous generations concluded, but it rarely teaches how those conclusions were actually formed. A mind trained only to memorize is incredibly efficient for sure, but it's an unconscious efficiency based entirely on inherited answers. A mind trained to question, however, that mind becomes truly conscious and aware.
So it really makes you wonder, are we actually educated or are we merely informed? Think of culture as this giant collective memory, constantly whispering, hey, this is just how things are done. But guys, culture is just an accumulated agreement. It's not absolute truth. So many of us inherit religious beliefs or cultural norms way before we ever develop self-awareness, and suddenly we're aggressively defending doctrines we never personally investigated. We're essentially accepting secondhand certainty instead of doing the work to find direct knowing. Moving on to Section 3, identifying the bugs, the prison of inherited labels.
Identity is obviously a useful construct on the surface, but when it operates unconsciously, it literally becomes a prison. The very second you declare, I am this, you are simultaneously screaming, I am not that. It creates belonging, sure, but it also creates instant separation. And modern civilization kind of thrives on this. It survives by convincing us we are fundamentally incomplete. It drives this endless psychological hunger through consumerism and totally engineered media attention. And then, get this, it turns around and sells us solutions for an artificial emptiness. I mean, retail therapy, anyone. But that emptiness cannot actually be fixed by buying something. Just look at the default template of success the world hands you. Get this specific job, earn exactly this much money, buy the big house, get the fancy title, chase the status. I want you to stop and ask yourself, who actually defined success for you before you started running yourself ragged chasing it? Really? How much of your life is built around just avoiding fear and living up to inherited expectations, rather than pursuing your own authentic truth? Because all these buggy systems, they form a massive interconnected feedback loop. Education affects culture, culture shapes religion, religion builds identity, identity triggers fear, fear drives behavior, and then that behavior just reinforces the whole societal machine. Fear is essentially humanity's primary operating system, the fear of rejection, the fear of failing, or just the fear of standing out.
And fear keeps the machine perfectly stable, because fearful minds will always prefer the comfort of certainty over the hard work of truth.
Okay, let's fix this. Section 4, the software update, your personal deconditioning.
The precise moment you realize this inherited operating system shapes you, but is not actually you, that's when you can start untangling the mess. The absolute key here is applying these 5 daily exercises to execute a complete system-wide software update. By actively practicing awareness, alignment, discipline, integration, and expansion, you can fully decondition yourself from all that bloated social software.
So step 1 is awareness. This clicks into place the exact moment you realize you're running someone else's programs. You have to stop asking, what do I think? And start asking, wait, why do I think it? Awareness is the tool that finally reveals the underlying code of your conditioning.
Once you can see the code, we move to step 2, alignment. Now you have to determine what actually aligns with truth. And I don't mean inherited truth or cultural truth or whatever happens to be popular today. I mean lived truth. Direct, experienced truth. Alignment happens when your actual life genuinely matches what you directly see and experience, rather than what society told you you're supposed to see.
Then comes step 3. And this one is tough. Discipline. Look, without discipline, awareness is basically just entertainment. Every single day, through pure repetition, fear, distraction, and habit, your old operating system is going to try to reinstall itself. It's relentless. So discipline is the continual, everyday act of staying conscious against that massive gravitational pull.
Step 4 is integration. This is when awareness officially leaves the realm of cool philosophy and actually enters your daily life. This is where the magic happens, folks. Your relationships start to change, your decisions shift, your priorities completely realign, your identity becomes way less performative and so much more authentic. You stop merely understanding the truth and you actually start embodying it. And finally, we hit step 5, expansion. This is what happens when your consciousness breaks out of those inherited limitations. You start seeing clearly beyond the labels, the tribalism, the psychological cages. And the crazy thing is, expansion isn't about becoming more or adding new layers to your identity. Actually, scratch that. It's the exact opposite. It's about becoming less confined, less programmed, less divided, and just infinitely more present and real. Which brings us to our final phase, section 5. System restart, the authentic code. Look, we're all born into a system we didn't create, right? We're shaped by forces we never chose. But awareness brings this entirely new possibility, the realization that your consciousness can observe the code without actually being imprisoned by it. So we really have to ask ourselves, who are you beneath every single label? Because there is always something deeper than identity. If you strip away the education, the culture, the success templates, and all the fears, what is actually left? That realization right there, that is the beginning of genuine freedom. Awakening isn't about becoming some shiny new version of yourself. It's really about returning to the part of you that existed before all the fear and conditioning took over. The child within you is still in there, still singing, still dancing, still creating. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. The original you is just waiting to be rebooted. So what are you going to create when you finally let them out?